Stellar Life. Mission log number 271.
The moment that someone sees you, they get an impression in their mind formed about you. In fact, in the first 2 to 7 seconds of someone laying eyes on you, they decide for themselves, do I like that person? Do I trust that person? Do I even want to have a conversation with them? And all of that is based on body language because the person hasn't even said a word yet. But we say a lot with our bodies. Your body is never not sending a message. Even if you're sitting still, I still can probably read you because maybe you have your right leg crossed over your left leg. Maybe you have a tilt in your head. Every one of those little things that you do tell me information about what's going on inside your mind.
Welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. Get inspired and live out loud. From love, freedom, and success to having it all. Here's your host, coach, speaker, and shining star, Orion.
Roger, you're looking good.
Hi, and welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. This is your host, Orion. When I arrived to the States, I believed that everybody were very true to what they say because I come from a culture where everyone is very straightforward, more direct than Americans. And with Americans, I had to learn that it's not always what they say that I have to listen to. It's the little nuances, the tone of voice, the body language. It was a learning curve for me. I had to, for example, my friend Delilah one took me to a gallery opening and she said, I looked at this painting and I said, oh my God, this is gross. She's like, no. You don't say something like that. If you see something like that, you just say, and somebody asks you, you just say, that is interesting. And then I went around and I was like, that is interesting. And that is interesting. And that is interesting. So I have learned how to read more of the tone of voice. And in Japan, living in Japan was also a learning curve for me because people are not as expressive as in Western society. I had to learn that just a little movement of the eye meant something, and I had to read their body language. So I think after spending time in Japan and arriving to the States and being exposed to those two new cultures that were very new to me at the time, I have learned to read people more based on what their energy, their body is doing than what they are saying. And for me, sometimes it's a blessing and a curse because I don't like when people lie to me, but I can see it. So it's a gift, but it doesn't feel that good when you notice somebody does something that you don't like or being deceiving to you. I became intuitively really good at learning body language, but today we have the real expert about body language. And she breaks it down and she really explained to you how to know if someone is lying and how to show up in your own body language as a very strong person. Jen Hargrave is the author of Let Me See Your Body Talk, Freeway of Love, Judge and Jury, Strictly Business Body Language, Poker Face, and more. She has shared her experience about body language, persuasion, and influence with the New York Times, NBC News, ABC News, CBC News, Fox Television, The Steve Harvey Show, the Lifetime Channel, E! Entertainment Television, and dozens of popular magazines such as Cosmopolitan, Glamour, People, US Weekly, and more, and more, and more. Jen describes the hidden messages you use in everyday life and shows you how to stop the lies and uncover the truth in any conversation or situation, which can be extremely useful. And this is just like a very, very useful and fun episode because Jen is like a marvelous speaker as well and just fun to talk to. The information was mind-blowing. And she's incredible, and you're going to love it. And now, without further ado, on to the show.
2, 1, 0.
Hello, Jen, and welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here too. I'm always thrilled to teach my science to people and always excited that people are interested in the world of body language and how to read others as they're talking with them.
Wow. And can you please share with us, how did you start with that passion of reading people's body language? When did it start for you?
It started a long time. I guess I always had watched people, but the real way that it started, I was sitting in a graduate psychology class and had a really fun professor. And every few days he would walk in and he would point at one of us and he would say, I know what you're thinking. Next day, come back, look at someone else. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. Kept doing that to us. One day he looked at me and he said, Jan, I know what you are thinking. And I thought, how can that old fool know what I'm thinking? Because it always wasn't too pretty. So he told us about body language. And I said, you mean I can study how a person moves his hands and his arms and his eyes and his shoulders, and I can figure the person out? He said, oh, yeah, you can do it. And I was dating someone at the time. So I said to my college professor, I said, so when this man tells me he loves me, I can figure out if he's telling the truth. And he said, oh, yes, you can do it. I said, I need to learn this stuff, because I thought, what an advantage I would have all my life. I could figure out if my boyfriends were lying to me or not. So I just started researching it, thinking, this will be fun. But then as the years went on of college, my research in nonverbal became more serious. I did my graduate thesis for my master's in body language. I have a third degree, also did a dissertation in the field of body language. So I am a business major and psychology minor. So I've always taught at the college level, taught business during the day, economics, but always at the night school, I always taught some kind of psychology class and primarily taught classes in nonverbal communication. It started off teaching it for attorneys to help attorneys pick more favorable juries. Because when an attorney's picking a jury, they want to pick someone who thinks like they think. And so while they're asking maybe 80 prospective jurors, then I'm sitting there with a pen and pencil. I'm writing everything that I see from the body language. And then the attorney and I get to consult at the end of the day. And I say, yes, you need this lady on your team. No, you need to scratch out this lady on your team because she does not like you one bit. So that's how they use me, Jan, the body language expert.
Wow, you're like the secret sauce.
The secret sauce. And, there's a show now called Bull, Bull, and it's a man who does what I do. And that we sit in the courtroom, we watch witnesses, or sometimes we prepare witnesses to maybe come across as credible and come across as honest. So not thinking, though, Orion, when I first studied it, I never knew how far reaching it would be, because I'd say, what can people think about this thing called body language? Because years ago, it was not looked at as a hard science. It was just like a playful thing. But then as years went on, and it started off really with O.J. Simpson's case, because they had hired a woman, Joellen Dimitri was another big body language expert, and they had hired her to pick that jury. So that's when people started hearing the word jury consulted. And then I started realizing, wow, there's a seriousness to everything that I've studied.
So for somebody that is just starting, what are some telltale signs to know that someone is lying to you?
Okay. Well, everyone always wants to know that. How can I tell if he's lying to me? Or as I told you earlier, people say to me, Jan, I would hate to be married to you. And I tell them, I would hate to be married to me too, because I'm sure that I drive my husband crazy. Just think, having a conversation with me, Orion, and he's moving his finger, and okay, Cecil, I know what's going on. So let's go back and let's think about body language. Think of it this way. The moment that someone sees you, they get an impression in their mind formed about you. In fact, in the first 2 to 7 seconds of someone laying eyes on you, they decide for themselves, do I like that person? Do I trust that person? Do I even want to have a conversation with them? And all of that is based on body language, because the person hasn't even said a word yet. But, they're looking at your hair, they're looking at your smile, they might be looking at how your shoulders are. So that's why nonverbal is really, really important. And I'll give you the percentages so that the listeners can really get a good grip on learning this. 55% of our communication is nonverbal, 55%. So that's why when people first see you, they get this impression of how they feel about you. 38% of our communication is simply voice inflection. So even if, like right now, we're just hearing someone's voice, you can kind of tell if that person is happy by listening to the sound of their voice. That is 38% of our communication. And then research says that only 7% of our communication, a face-to-face communication, comes from the words that we say. And that's why we say actions speak louder than words. We say a lot with our bodies. Your body is never not sending a message. Even if you're sitting still, I still can probably read you because maybe you have your right leg crossed over your left leg. Maybe you have a tilt in your head. Every one of those little things that you do tell me information about what's going on inside your mind. So think of it this way. The words that come out of your mouth gives me information about the knowledge contained in your brain. But every hand or motion or eye movement that you do gives me information about your attitudes, your feelings, and your emotions. So your words tell me what you have learned so far in your life, but all of your emotions tell me about how you're feeling right now with your attitude, your feelings, and your emotions. So when we're talking about deceptiveness, we have to lay a little bit of groundwork. I can teach different gestures that say, oh, this person is probably lying. But when I coach people, I say you cannot base your findings on just one deceptive gesture. Like if I'm questioning someone in the courtroom, I want to see 2 or 3 deceptive gestures before I say, oh, I am being lied to. So that's why we always talk about clusters of gestures to get yourself a good reading. And I think you understand what I'm meaning when I say that, Orion, when I say clusters of gestures.
Yeah, because sometimes if somebody scratches their nose, maybe they have an itch in their nose and they might not be lying. So you want to look for more than one sign for that.
Correct. So I never want to, but at least if you're talking with someone and you know one of the gestures of lying and you see it, you could re-ask that question several different ways and several different times and see if you get a deceptive gesture every time you ask that certain question. So now that we talked about that, I want to tell you a few gestures that could be associated with someone being dishonest with you. So I want you to think of it like this. Why do your hands move when you're talking? And the reason your hands move is that your hands are pulling from different sides of your brain to gather information. For example, when I move my right hand or anything that I move on my right side of my body, any motion that I do on my right side of the body, that is all controlled from the left side of my brain. And of course, my left brain is my analytical side. It's my factual side. It's my numerical side. My timetables are located in the upper left side of my head. So when I am multiplying something in my head and I have trouble getting the numbers multiplied, I would start moving my right hand. It would help clarify what I'm thinking. And then finally, I could speak those words. When I move my left hand or anything that I move on the left side of my body, that is all controlled from the right side of my brain. And the right brain, this side's the fun side and the comical side and the creative side. The right brain daydreams. So if ever you drove somewhere one day and you can't remember how you got there, you drove there driving right brain. So you understand why the hands move. Your hands move to help you get all these thoughts in your head organized so that they come out in a logical fashion when you're talking with people. Because if you had to speak with someone and never was allowed hands while you're speaking, maybe had to tie them behind you, it would become really difficult to organize your thoughts and get them out in a logical manner. So now that you're kind of understanding, my left hand is controlled from the right side of my head. Think of it this way. When I make up a story or tell a lie, it is coming from my right brain, correct? You kind of get that feeling because that's a creative side. So if I'm telling my mom a story, it's coming from my right brain. So therefore, if it's coming from my right brain, when I gesture, when I'm being deceptive, more than likely my gestures will be done with my left hand. It's never that left-handed people lie more than right-handed people. Never, never, never.
So wait, so what I understood is that the right brain is connected to the left side and the left brain is connected to the right side. And if somebody's left-handed, what does that mean?
It doesn't mean anything different. Even people who are left-handed, their left brain controls their right side movement. Their right brain controls their left side movement. Because let's say you've seen someone who had a stroke and maybe the right side of their head they had a stroke on the right brain. They would not be able to maybe move their left leg or their left arm because the brain kind of works like in a diagonal way across the body. So when someone's being deceptive, whether they're right-handed or they're left-handed, it is still coming out of the right side of their head. So all of us, no matter right-handed or left-handed, when we're being deceptive, have a huge tendency to gesture with our left hand. And 3 different gestures that people do when they're being deceptive, they're trying to distract you. So let's say I'm telling you a story and part of the story is being made up. I'm telling you the story, but I'm going to try to get you to think of something else while I'm telling you the story. That's what liars, because think what's going on inside the mind of a liar. They're having to remember their lie, but they're also trying to watch you to see if you are believing what they're telling you. So you understand? Think how busy their head is. So what we have found is this: when someone's getting ready to tell you something and they know that it's probably not true, they're making it up, they're going to take their left index finger. And while they lie, most times they're going to take that left index finger and they will begin to rub up and down the left side of their nose with their left index finger. They'll usually rub up and down about twice on the left side of the nose. And then they'll bend the finger and maybe place the hand underneath their nose. This is still all with the left hand. So think what's going on when someone's doing this. When I'm touching my nose with my left hand, I'm almost covering my mouth. So think what's going on. They are covering their mouth, hoping that you don't pay attention to what's coming out of the mouth, that you're more so paying attention to the hand motions that are being done in their face. So people it's called a distraction. So they're trying to distract you maybe with the ring they have on, maybe with the pretty fingernails they have on, maybe with the watch that they have on. Because if you're in a conversation, someone has a pretty ring on their left hand and their left hand is covering their nose, you're not thinking about what they're saying to you, just thinking, wow, that's a good looking ring. So a liar tends to bring a hand to the face because it goes back to when you were a little kid. When you were a kid and you said something you should not have said, you cupped both of your hands and you brought them towards your mouth. And you're like, oh, I can't believe I said that. You know, when we're kids, we say that. So even as an adult, we're more sophisticated. We won't bring both of our hands towards our mouth, but we'll take that left hand and we're going to pretend almost that we're touching the nose. And it's in effect trying to say, I'm covering my mouth because what I'm saying to you is really not the truth. The reason that someone touches the nose when they're being deceptive, this is a physiological effect. Every time you tell a lie, you get a tingling sensation in your nose. And because of it, you end up rubbing on the nose. It sounds crazy, but from all the research, this is what we have found, kind of like the bobbles inside your nostrils. You know, you're trying to protect yourself from someone catching you in a lie. So they kind of swell up. And because of that, you feel this kind of tingling and itchy sensation. So now you can have fun with this gesture. You go to someone, Orion, and say to them, rubbing your nose, saying, you're the best looking thing I've ever seen. They don't even know that you're being deceptive with them. So let me give you lying gesture 2 and lying gesture 3. And touching of the nose, let me just remember to tell you this. That goes back to the Pinocchio effect. Because sometimes you've seen politicians, maybe it was Clinton, maybe it was Richard Nixon, after years of being in trouble, they'd have them on the cover of Time magazine, a side view, and the nose was really, really extended like Pinocchio. So that's where all this story, so it kind of makes sense right now. It's kind of funny, but it does make sense that the more the person lies, the longer the nose gets. And so with that hand motion, you know, when I'm touching my nose, after I touch it, my hand kind of extends outward in front of me. You know, just kind of rub it and the hand goes outward, like, in other words, pretending that I'm extending my nose. When you think about the background of a gesture, it seems to make more sense. Now, watch this. The second 2 gestures of dishonesty, or they're all 3 done with the left index finger. So again, it's taking your left hand. And while you're telling someone a story, you point the left index finger just slightly. And while you're talking, you begin to rub on the outside of the left eye. So let's say I'm telling you something and I'm slightly rubbing on my eye to the left, just kind of tugging and tugging. That is a nonverbal gesture that says, do not see very clearly what I'm saying because I am not being fully truthful with you. And I'm sure you've seen someone tell you something and kind of rub on the eye or the upper left cheek. So it has to be left hand, has to be left eye, or has to be left upper cheek. You know, they'll just tell you something because think about it. That is, again, a distraction. They're trying to make you look there and not look at their mouth and focus on the words that are coming out of your mouth. And then the third gesture of deception, again, is the left hand. It comes back to the left side of the face. And now they will start to pull on the left ear. You know how someone will take, you know, the back side of the left ear and just kind of talk with you and they're just tugging at that ear? There is no sense that someone's doing that when they're talking with you. They're doing it hoping that you would look here and that you would not focus on the words coming out of the mouth. And when they're tugging at the ear and telling you something, it's almost simultaneously that they're thinking to themselves, do not hear very clearly what I'm saying because I'm not being fully truthful with you. So touching of the nose, touching of the left eye, touching of the left ear. And people seem to say to me, they say, Jan, well, I understand why someone touches the nose because they want to cover their mouth. They're attempting to cover their mouth. But why would someone touch his eye and why would someone touch his ear when being deceptive? These 2 touches refer back to that person's preferred method of learning. Because in this world, people are either visual learners, auditory learners, or kinesthetic learners. So people who are visual learners, they have to see something for it to sink in their brain. People who are auditory learners, they have to hear it for them to sink in their brain. So I am visual. So I'm, as a visual person, if I lie, my husband doesn't even know this, but it's kind of cool to know. When I lie, I touch my left eye. Visual people touch their eye when they lie. Audio people touch their ear when they lie. All of us touch the left side of our nose when we're being deceptive. So it kind of makes sense now a little bit.
Yeah, and it's incredible. Do you think some people are such perfect liars that they can even like control their body not to touch their eye or their cheek or their ear?
Yes. People who are compulsive liars, like let's say Scott Peterson. You remember Casey Anthony with the baby missing 31 days?
No, never heard of it.
Oh, it was in Orlando, Florida. It was about, I would say, 5 years ago. You remember Scott Peterson, Lacey Peterson, a case in...
I think I was traveling the world and busy.
Oh, you're busy.
I was too busy having fun.
Oh, it was a case in California. Well, I happen to have done their body language for TV. So
okay.
Normally I do work for ABC News, NBC, CBS, and I'm either doing the body language of certain politicians or certain people accused of crimes. But yes, so people who are really used to lying and that they're comfortable with it, they probably more can conceal that they're lying. You know, they probably wouldn't rub their nose, they wouldn't rub their eye, but we catch them in other ways. And the other ways would maybe be even in sentence analysis. When they're telling us a sentence, people form sentences truthfully a certain way. And when people are being deceptive, the sentence has key words in there that let you know, like people who start sentences, well, I swear to God, or honestly, typically those sentences will have some kind of deception in it. Or people who use the present tense and past tense in one sentence. That is we call that when we're doing sentence analysis, it could be a deceptive sentence right there.
Can you give me an example of that?
Well, they'd say, well, I am going to the house. I went to the house earlier today. You know, am would be present tense and went would be past tense. Or, you know, they use a different tense in the same sentence. When they're talking about, I can't think of a sentence right now, but Bill Clinton was also guilty of that too. I did Bill Clinton's body language, by the way. He rubbed his nose once every 4 minutes when he was testifying.
Are there other signs?
Hundreds of others. But this is how you have to think of it this way. We call them displacement gestures. Okay, displacement gestures are gestures that are done that are not necessary gestures. Like if you could see me right now, I'm taking my right hand and I'm just rubbing up and down my neck with my index finger. That is a displacement gesture. Someone who is always fixing their clothing and pulling on their jackets, that's a displacement gesture. Someone pulling pieces of imaginary lint off of their clothing, that's a displacement gesture. Even someone who tosses their hair too much, anytime that someone does a gesture that's not really a necessary gesture, it's just a gesture that's done because they're nervous. Maybe someone taking one of their hands and scratching the their other hand. You can't see me, but let's say I'm taking my right hand and I'm just scratching on top of my left hand for no reason. That's a displacement gesture. You can usually tell how nervous someone is about what they're saying by how many displacement gestures they do while they're talking with you. Because people who are being honest, they will just talk with you. Their fingers are going to probably be wide apart and they're just explaining their issue. People who are nervous with what they're saying will do all kinds of unnecessary gestures while they're giving you their story. And, you know, another thing that we have to, you know, let our listeners understand is that people trust you faster when they can see your hands. So lately I've been doing a lot of training about virtual conversations.
Oh, that's so good. Yes, let's talk about that. Yeah.
Yes, because even on a virtual screen, you have to still come across as honest and dependable. And, you know, I prepare TV anchors, and I'm sure there's some TV anchors you like more than others, and it's because you trust them because you like their body language. So the same thing that we're training TV anchors with, we train now people on virtual screens. And one of the things that I always train them in is at some time when you're talking with another person, you have to let them see your hands because people trust you faster when they can see a few hand motions from you. Never crazy hands, but maybe you raise your hand near your face to count with your fingers. Well, number 1, number 2, number 3. And I'm coaching people now that you need to probably gesture to the right or left side of your face. You never want to gesture in front of your face because then your hand gets bigger when it gets closer to the camera. So you probably want to gesture to your left. But the reason that about hands, just to give you some background on it, I mean, think of hands. Hands gave birth to you. Hands held you when you were a baby. When you were a kid and you were upset, you went to your mom, she probably held you. She held your hand. You married someone, you held their hand. You get older, you hold someone else's hand. But hands can harm you, and hands can hurt you, and hands can kill you. That's why a police officer says, show me your hands. Because without us noticing it, for our safety, when we see someone in person, we're looking for survival. We're always in the survival mode. All of us are. And when you're having a conversation with an individual, you feel safer when you see a few hand motions from them. So I tell men, you cannot have 30 minutes of conversation with a woman, especially, and keep your hands in your pockets the whole time that you're talking with them. Because when people can see your hands a little bit, they take a deep breath and they say, oh, I feel safe around this person. So, it's just a small thing that we don't think about every day, but it is prevalent and we have to think about it in society. So one gesture that's really good to show on a virtual screen, and I'm putting my hands almost as though I'm in prayer, but I'm not touching my wrists together. I'm just touching the tips of my fingers together. Can you picture in your mind what I'm doing?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a steeple in body language. It is probably the biggest sign, a gesture of confidence that I could ever teach a group of people. Anytime you're going to see this formation when someone's talking with you, whether the fingertips are touching or whether the fingertips are 3 or 4 or 5 inches away, but the hands are still kind of in a steepling position, that's called a goalpost steeple when the hands are not touching. Every time you're going to see that gesture, it is always, always associated with a level of confidence with the person who is speaking with you. So that's one thing that everyone can do on a virtual screen is every now and then maybe do a steeple gesture. You probably, even with my pointer fingers together and I'm talking with you there, I could still make a steeple. With my thumbs just facing each other together at the top, I could make a steeple. So steepling is really interesting that people will do. One other thing probably that you can do when you're on the screen, when I cup my hands, let's say I'm talking with you right now and I'm cupping my hands. Cupping your hands represents that you have a strong idea in your mind and you want to share it with another person. So when you're talking, your hands are cupped. And then one thing that I think people can always remember is upward facing palms always show acceptance. Downward facing palms are more of a controlling display. So if I'm talking with you and I'm trying to bring information from you, I'm going to probably talk with you and my hands are going to be upward, kind of pulling you into my circle. I'm just taking my hands, you're kind of describing, but my hands are kind of cupped and I'm kind of bringing them towards my body as I'm speaking with you here. If I'm talking with you, my hands are facing downward. That is a nonverbal message that says, I want to control you. So you might not want to do that in a virtual call. And then I tell people, you kind of have the screen that it's about at chest level. Don't let it be just your head because I don't get you if it's just your head. I cannot see your sweet personality. I cannot see the eagerness of you having a conversation with me. If it's just your head, I need to see at least till you're, I would say, chest level. And also when we coach people about the virtual screens, I always tell them you have to have your shoulders level and completely facing that screen because unevenness of shoulders is indecisiveness of person. So if I'm talking to someone on a screen and one of my shoulders is higher than the other shoulder, the entire time that I'm talking with them, they won't realize what it is. But after a while, they'll start feeling uncomfortable. The human eye likes symmetry. And so even when you're gesturing, it's always better to have your gestures look like each other. So like right now, I have my hands kind of facing each other, but they're about 6 inches apart. It's always better than, let's say if I'm gesturing and one of my hands is near my eyes and one of my other hand is at my waist, that can kind of make people crazy. So the eye likes it when the two gestures are kind of looking or mirroring each other. Yeah, so shoulders are, and you know what? Shoulders set the tone for the entire meeting. Because the way that your shoulders are when you come on that screen, because let's say you're having a luncheon meeting with someone at a restaurant and they got there before you got there, and then you got there and you're looking for them and you see them at their chair and their shoulders are all slumped. They're telling you right there, they're not that excited to have a meeting with you. So as much as you can, our mom said, you put your shoulders up. Our moms probably were right because, it's kind of military and it's powerful. You look a lot more powerful when your shoulders are, in yoga, we kind of put them in that back socket. When your shoulders are like that, because those people will form an impression of you, remember, 2 to 7 seconds. So if you're looking all disheveled and your shoulders are not quite right, And then with the arms, it's always better to be open with my hands kind of spread a bit instead of with my hands or arms in front of my body. Of course, that's defensiveness. And you know how sometimes you cross your arms in front of your body. It's as if you're thinking, I don't care what you're saying. I do not want whatever you're saying to penetrate the way that I feel. The only acceptable arm crossing that we allow and teach in college negotiation classes is when hands and fingers are visible. So Orion, if I'm crossing my hands, the only way that you can cross your hands is to cross your arms and let me see your fingers. So let's say right now I'm crossing, but I'm holding on with my hands to my upper arms. You understand? That's better. It's more as though you are in contemplation. And if I'm not showing you any hand whatsoever when I'm crossing my arms across my body, that is a really negative defensive pose. You get the difference. You kind of get the difference, though, huh?
Wow. Yeah, I'm actually moving as you speak. I'm like, let me try it. Let me try this. Let me try this.
Me too. Look, I'm doing all these things like you can see me or something. But I think our listeners could understand that when you're listening, try to show at least one of, even if it's just one of your hands that's showing, the other might be underneath the other arm. It's more as though you are in contemplation and you're thinking about what's being said, as opposed to holding your arms really tight and you cannot see your hands at all. So when we talk about body language, another C, the first C was clusters, that you would look for more than one. The second C is context. And by context, I mean, when you see a gesture, like the arm crossing, it does not mean the same thing in every environment. So context is the environment. If I see a woman on a cold winter night sitting on a park bench and her arms across, she's telling me that she's cold. But if I see a business executive in a meeting room and his arms are tightly crossed, he's probably telling me that he does not want to listen to what I'm saying. So you cannot take one gesture and just say it's a universal meaning. That gesture will have a different meaning in the context or the environment that gesture appears in.
So you said cluster, you said context, and what was the third one?
Well, I didn't say the third one yet, but clusters would be that you find more than one. The second one is context. You have to really think, well, where is this gesture appearing? What kind of meeting is it? Or is it, what's the setting? And the third one is congruence. And by congruence, I mean, when you're trying to analyze someone, you have to think to yourself, does the wording that they're saying matching the gestures that they're showing you?
Right.
So if I would say to you, I like you so much, but my head's going into a no, actions speak louder than words. People will believe the gesture before they believe the words. So congruence. So if someone says, I'm happy to see you, and their body language is all open and they're really excited and have a genuine smile, that's me. That's perfect congruence. But if I'm saying to you, I'm happy to see you, when my voice is not even excited, that's what we call incongruence. And when you have incongruence of body language and the words coming out of the person's mouth, people will not trust what you are saying. So it has to all match. Or sometimes, I might watch a politician who knows that a steeple is a sign of confidence. So they kind of know that because politicians know some things about body language. But when I'm watching him on TV, I notice that he does not use it where he should in the sentence. So for example, let's say he'd say an entire sentence, and then when the sentence is over, I notice that he would say to himself, oh, I forgot to do the steeple gesture, and does it right there. So you can see what happens when the gesture does not appear, because a real gesture comes out about 1/25 before the word that matches it comes out.
Oh, wow.
So so that's how you can probably tell if someone's trying to pull the wool over your eyes, is that they'll do a gesture either too delayed or too early, too fast. And one good way to study body language is to watch the television with no sound on. Because then when you're watching it, even with no sound on, you could probably, especially a soap opera, you could tell what's going on, correct?
Yeah.
And another, just kind of remember this about hands in general. Hands are like windows. When the weather's nice and there's a breeze, the windows are open. When you're happy and you're carefree, your fingers are wide apart. The more comfortable you are, the more there is space between all of your fingers. Let's say on a cold winter night and it's bad weather outside, those windows are closed. When you're angry and upset and nervous, your hands are also closed. Sometimes they even in a fist where you would punch out at someone. So to get a general view, let's say you're just watching someone from a distance and you're thinking, okay, let me just try to study their body language and figure them out. Just look as you're talking to someone else, how much space you see between their fingers. They're talking, their fingers are all wide apart. They're feeling pretty good and they're confident with what they're saying. If they're talking, their fingers are really all tight together, the hands are tight, they're uneasy with what's going on in that conversation. It's a quick little read of someone.
Mm-hmm. What about the auditory part? How can we hear? Because sometimes we're just on the phone. How can we hear if somebody's not genuine with us?
Yes, because people ask me that about wearing masks. If you can't see their face, how do you read their facial expressions?
Right, yeah.
But it's going to come out in your voice, because when you are smiling and you're talking with me on the phone, I can tell in your voice that you're smiling. So even if someone has a mask on and they're like, you can't see me now, but I think my voice sounds like I'm pretty chipper. So I think by just listening to someone's voice, you can tell if they're, into what's going on, or if they're really paying attention to what you're saying. Because if the voice is just a kind of a monotone, they're probably wanting to be somewhere else. And there's only two things we study about voices. When someone is stressed and strained and probably lying to you, the voice gets extremely, extremely high. So when people lie, the voice is high. When people are afraid, the voice gets really, really low.
And what about those icons and actors, reality show stars? A lot of time they have this very, very high voice that it's not authentic. So does that mean they're not an authentic person?
Is it when they're being interviewed, or is it when they're in a movie?
Like some people have it all the time.
Yeah. Can you give me an example?
No, nothing comes to mind, but I just feel like sometimes I hear people with very high pitch voice. Probably
a mixture of excitement, more so than, depends on what the subject is they're being asked about. But normally people talk like this, like you and I are talking just as a normal tone.
Right.
And a lot of times the tone of voice someone speaks with is dependent on if they're an extroverted or an introverted personality.
I have a family member and she speaks with a very high tone voice all the time.
Is she extroverted?
She's very extroverted.
Yeah, she's loud. You see, loud people, I'm kind of loud. We kind of speak in that big voice. And people who are introverted, like think of accountants or engineers, a softer voice. A lot of that has to do with our personality. It's never that someone's, being deceptive. I think it's more so if they're introverted or extroverted personalities. So it's a hard thing to read, but in the courtroom, we listen to the voice. We're listening to the voice and we're listening to see if it's high or if it's low. We kind of train though for certain voices and certain sounds that we hear to give the person away. But yes, someone talking in that high a voice, like you're telling me, this woman who it can be deafening after a while to others. It can get you tired to listen to their voice, because like when we study TED Talks are 18 minutes, okay? And in TED Talks, we've measured that their gestures are between 200 and 600 gestures in 18 minutes of a TED Talk. Those TED Talks that are most popular and most often watched are the TED Talks that have between 100 and 600 gestures as they go. Now, someone who has 600 gestures, sometimes that turns someone off to begin with, because the voice is really fast and the gestures are going. So the most popular ones are about 400 gestures in this 18-minute video. So that kind of lets you know that people will listen to a voice after a while, but if it's too convoluted and fast and crazy, after a while, you're not going to be listening to it for too long, because it's nothing about the voice is soothing. And sometimes it might needs a break, from having a voice and go ba 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 the whole time. The average mind of a person listening will need a break in that.
Right. Do you think you became a more honest person now that you know how people lie?
I don't know, but look, sometimes, and I have some friends, and sometimes I'm having dinner with them, thinking to myself, did she just lie to me? Sometimes they forget what I do for a living, but look, I'm always on it. I won't say anything, but in my mind, I know. And the way to catch someone really in a lie is like, let them tell you their lie. And then let them tell, they'd be talking, you think to yourself, I think that she just lied like that, but you can't say anything right then. So then talk about something else, and then you come back to them and say, so tell me that story again. And when they tell you the story again, though, you have to be prepared to ask them a question about something that happened at the end of the story. You need to ask it to them at the beginning of the story. Because when people make up a story and they memorize something, they memorize it step by step by step by step. Like someone might say, at 5:32, I exited Walmart. At 5:45, I felt a hit on my head. See, that's a practiced story. So you if you feel you're being lied to, you can't just say it to them, but you can delve enough and ask enough different questions about it that they're going to figure in their head that they got caught, that you figured them out, that you caught them in their lie. You never say to them, I caught you in a lie, but they'll know you caught them in their lie.
Oh, wow.
Try to remember that it's like, mama working with a child. You can't just say, come on, you just lied to me, but, talk about something else and come back and say, so tell me that story again. But you have to be prepared to ask them something from the end of the story way at the beginning when they start asking you the question. I know, isn't that funny? It's so funny that the world of body language. And now I guess I just can't stop it. I do it every day.
Wow. And so how can you watch TV?
I know.
Like if you watch the news, how can you watch the news?
How can I watch the news? But I do watch the news. I do. And I see myself at airports when I'm waiting for a plane. I'm looking at this person, like this couple. I'm like, oh, he's lying to this woman, or he's trying to pick this woman up in a bar. That's what's most fun for me, is watching people in a bar and trying to figure out who's trying to pick up who. Don't you think that's a fun part of this whole job?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I do that sometimes. I look at people and I'm like, yeah, they're just dating. Interesting.
They're just dating.
They're so cute.
Yeah, they're so cute. I know.
Everybody behaves so well when they're just dating for the first time. They are also polite to the waitress. They look at each other and they say the right things.
Right. But yeah, sometimes when we see what we're trying to figure out, is this their first date or their second date? Some other things that people could do, on a virtual call too. Like right now, I'm taking my right hand, I'm kind of rubbing underneath my chin back and forth. There are man will kind of rub his chin back and forth. That is a huge evaluation gesture. It just kind of is like thinking, how much of this stuff is true? So if you're going to bring your hand to your face, that would be the only acceptable hand motion that I would let someone do. Either rubbing of the chin back and forth slightly and then bringing your hand back down, or taking your thumb and your index finger and kind of just pulling on the bottom of the chin just for a bit. And you bend your index finger and kind of just pull.
This is a gesture Tony Robbins does a lot.
What is it?
The one with the thumb and the finger. He brings it to his
chin and pulls a little bit.
Yeah. He does that a lot.
Yeah. Rubbing of the chin is simultaneously correlated with evaluation. Always, always, always. And like a woman might take her pointer finger, put her pointer finger up, and just put it on the side of her face. But that also is called critically evaluating. The whole head and the hand is boredom, but when the finger is up and you're just kind of resting there, it's critically evaluating. So wow. It is a good gesture. But you probably would not want to do it if you're talking on a virtual screen. But definitely you would want to do it while you're listening to someone else talk. And also, I encourage people and I tell them, while you are listening to someone on a virtual screen, you must nod your head every now and then, and you need to smile back at that person, because those two gestures are encouragement to another person. Let them know that you're there and you're listening. You've got to just every now and then kind of nod your head and let them know, hey, I'm here. I might not agree with everything you're saying, but at least I'm here. We relate it this way. We say 2 head nods mean that they agree and they're listening. 3 head nods means that someone would like you to be quiet because they have something to say at that time. Because normally if you're listening, you go, and your head kind of goes up and down. When you're ready to talk, you put your head up and down 3 times. You go, So when I'm on a virtual screen, I see someone do that, I know that I need to be quiet because they probably have an item they want to bring up. And another point too is when people have a slight tilt of the head, it means that they're really into what's going on. Slight tilts are wonderful.
I do that a lot naturally. Like even now, before you said that, I'm like,
you said, slight tilts, a head tilt is a wonderful sign, because you would never tilt your head if you were not comfortable in a situation, because the reason is because the neck is really a vulnerable area of a person, and people could strike you and hurt you. So you will never expose your neck unless you are comfortable with that person. So you can kind of just watch, but if someone's listening to you and their head is tilted to the side, it means that they're really, really into that conversation. When someone keeps their head straight up and down, it's as though they're thinking, when is this thing going to be over? I want to get out of here. So the head straight up and down is like anticipation, get out of here. And the head, just kind of to the side says, I'm kind of analyzing and I'm into what's being said. When we talked about the bar, watching someone at a bar, I wrote 5 books, but one of my books is on romantic body language. Gestures that men do or ladies do that say, oh, baby, I think you're so good looking. So I can maybe give you, that book is called Freeway of Love. Freeway of Love. You remember the old song, Orion, Freeway of Love? You ever heard that song?
No.
I think it was Roberta Flack on the Freeway of Love in my pink Cadillac. When I wrote the book, that was my intent. I just wanted the reader to travel this highway of romance. So chapter 1, you see someone across the room who looks good. Chapter 2, you're looking at them. They catch you looking at them. So there's an eye protocol in that. Chapter 3, you're getting closer to them. So, the book has 11 chapters, but each chapter brings you closer and closer. And since I had named the book a song, I had this bright idea one Sunday afternoon. I thought I would just name every chapter in the book a song. So chapter 1 in that book is titled Let's Get It On. That was an old song by...
I know that one.
Get It On. That's the first chapter. The second chapter...
Let's Get It On?
Yeah, that's it. That's chapter 1 in that book. Chapter 2 is about eyes. So I titled it The Look of Love, was a song by Sergio Mendez. Chapter 3, they're getting closer to each other. I use Roberta Flack's The Closer I Get to You. It just goes down. There's some fun chapters. I put a chapter on legs, and I use She's Got Legs by ZZ Top. I did a chapter on kisses, and I put Prince's song, Just Want Your Extra Time and Your Kiss. And then I did a chapter on lying. How do you spot when lovers are lying to each other? And I titled it Smooth Operator by Sade. Remember that
I love that one.
Operator. Yeah, and I
Smooth
listed
operator.
Oh, you have a good voice.
Thank you.
Yes. But that's so good that you saying that, because my intent was that when people saw the names of the chapters, that song would stay in their mind the whole time they read that chapter.
That's a good anchor. It's a great anchor. They'll remember everything.
And in that chapter on Smooth Operator, I listed the 101 most often told lies that lovers tell each other. I listed 101. Lie number 2 is I love you. Lie number 10 is I have never done this kind of thing before.
I have never done that thing before.
That's right. Scarlett O'Hara. And lie number 1 is either I'll call you or I'll text you. Number 1 lie. I'll call you.
That's fascinating.
But now you can't, because they'll rub their nose and say, yeah, baby, I'll call you. So you want a couple of gestures that men and women do that say, come on over?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the number 1 gesture that men do, let's say you're talking with the guy and he thinks you're nice looking and he doesn't know how to tell you that he finds you really attractive. The number 1 thing that guys do is that a guy will reach down and rearrange his socks. Sock pulling is the number 1. I live in Texas. I see men digging cowboy boots for socks. Sock pulling is a big court. It's a displacement gesture. And Orion, think where it comes from. You might hear one young man say, you need to see this girl. She will knock your socks off. You will never look at sock pulling like you look. Now you see a man tomorrow, you say like, oh, he's pulling up his socks. Is the number 1 thing that men do. That's kind of cool to know, huh?
Very cool to know.
You will never look. Now you remember when you see someone, you say, oh, Jan told me this guy's, and that's what it comes from. It's like the Cinderella effect in shoes, because another thing that a guy does, let's say a guy and a girl are talking and he's holding on to a Coca-Cola can. What do guys do? They have a can in their hand, they kind of squeeze it, they let it go, they squeeze it. Every time he squeezes it, he's thinking to himself, I'd like to squeeze you, baby. So you might want to watch the cans. I mean, there are hundreds. The number 1 gesture that ladies do. Now, men think the lady touches her hair, she likes it. That is not the first thing that ladies do. Ladies do 3 things before they even touch their hair. First thing a lady does, a lady always crosses her leg towards the person she feels is most attractive. We always cross towards people we like and away from people we don't like. So if there's a man sitting on my right side, I will cross my leg towards him. Then the second thing I do, once I'm crossed towards him, I'm going to take the upper leg and I'll slowly start swinging it. A slow swing is like, yeah, baby, you need to look at me now. You never want to see someone who's kicking fast. A fast kick or swing is a sign of impatience. So you never want to do that. You want to do, it's kind of like a rhythm, like you're kind of kicking the foot. And then the number 1 gesture that women do that's equivalent to the male sock pulling is the dangling of the shoe. Women dangle their shoes and men pull up their socks. Goes back to the Cinderella effect. In the beginning of time, years and years ago, it was shoes that were hung behind wedding cars. Now it's cans and everything else, but it was shoes. And then after she's done those 3 things, that's when she starts to touch her hair. And the more that she touches her hair, the more she's into the guy. I tell people you cannot touch your hair really a lot during a serious business setting, because it will undermine everything that you've laid down on that table. It's too frivolous. Fooling of the hair, tossing the hair in a serious business meeting is really thinking to themselves, do you think I look good enough for you? So women really, and sometimes they'll take the hair and roll it over their head. That means like they're getting hot under the collar. they're doing this. It's okay to do on a date and stuff like that, but not too much in a serious business meeting.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And I have a question.
Sure.
If we adopt a strong body language, can it change our emotions and can it change the way we are?
Yes. And that's the best question people can ask me, because let's say you're having to go on stage to do a speech and you're behind the curtains and you kind of rubbing all your hands together. You know what I'm doing, like Orion? You just kind of, oh God, I can't believe I have to go on stage. You're doing this. You know what? If you just stop doing that and stand there for a second and do the steeple gesture, where your fingertips are touching, the gestures can calm you down and give you the confidence that you need.
Wow.
So it's kind of like, with prisoners, we'll take prisoners and we'll change their handwriting, and sometimes we can change their behavior. But the same thing with the gesture, because when kids would go to school on picture taking day and they had to wear good clothes, they always behaved better than on days they just wore regular clothes. So the kind of clothing you have or the way your shoulders are pushed back can kind of put you with an air of greatness and of confidence.
Wow. Jen, you're unbelievable. You're so fascinating. Your wisdom is incredible. I personally want to learn everything that I can from you.
Oh, thank you. It's a fun science.
Oh my God. But you're a fun person. You don't just teach it. You're so much fun and you're so lovely and lovable that it's just an extraordinary combination.
Thank you. Well, I was a teacher for so long, but I think I teach in a fun way. And when you teach someone something and you give them the background about that gesture, it more or less stays in their mind and becomes permanent learning for them. And that's my goal, is that people learn and use it to their advantage, in a job interview, in a business setting, on a date, wherever they need, on a virtual call.
Right. So I wish you come back on the show again and we can have more of this goodness. But I want to be respectful of your time today. Before we say goodbye, what are your 3 quick top tips to living a stellar life? And then where can people find you?
I guess the top things to live in a stellar life are, I think, courtesy to other people, sometimes making people feel that they are superior to you, even though they are not, but people feel like not being superior, but that they're special. Like maybe you remember their name, maybe they're checking it out. I think that kind of sets a good light for you always. And then, I try to think as positive as you can about every situation that comes into your life, because life is hard. So, you have to keep your little brain okay. And maybe the way to keep your little brain okay is to do some outside reading, to really delve down into your own little system, because everybody's fighting a battle. Everyone who we meet, some is just a little bit tougher than others. So we can show them that courtesy, but we always have to remember to take care of ourselves too. And so that's what, you need to have some fun. You need to have some fun. You need to have some good friends. You need to talk things over with people, I think. And maybe sometimes listening to some of the topics you have, Orion, too, I think are really good. I looked through all of your topics, and anything that I guess we can do better for humanity, we will sit well with the gods. So my website is my name. It's just Jan, Jan, Hargrave, HARGRAVE.com.
And people can learn how to do some of the things that you do.
Correct. I have an online course that they can purchase if they'd like. And by listening to me today, if they want to get the special, because we always do that when someone's in one of my courses or one of my seminars, just put janhargrave.com and then /special, the word special, and you'll get a big reduction on the course itself. But my 5 books are also on the site. So my first book is Let Me See Your Body Talk, and that's body language, job interview, body language presentation skills, body language, gender differences. My second book is Judge the Jury. That's everything we do in the courtroom. So it's really how to spot a liar. My third book is Freeway of Love, and that's boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, lover's body language. My fourth book is Strictly Business Body Language. That is simply sales and negotiations, and is filled with pictures of people sitting all kinds of crazy ways. And then I analyze it underneath there. And then my last book is titled Poker Face, because I train professional poker players.
Wow.
So with that, that's a good array of things, huh?
It's a wonderful array of things.
And they can get all that on my site. It's easy. It's just janhargrave.com.
Perfect, Jan. Thank you so much. This was so much fun for me and very exciting for me to learn. And I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure. My pleasure. Happy that you got in touch with me.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners. Remember, be courteous to other people. Make people feel special. Think positive as much as you can and have a lot of fun and have a stellar life. This is Orion. Till next time. Thank you for joining me on my mission to light people up and change lives around the world. I hope today's conversation inspires you to step up, go after the life of your dreams, and be who you want to be. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to go to stellarlifepodcast.com for show notes, transcripts, and other cool stuff. And please subscribe, review, and help spread the word by sharing us on Facebook and Twitter. Have a lovely day, and I'll catch you on the next episode.